a few minutes to add some topics for discussion to the board. And then what we'll do is we'll move into a voting round for everybody to vote on the topics for discussion. And then we'll order those topics based on the number of votes that have been received. And then we'll take, we're going to do that topic. We can all vote and continue talking for another 3 minutes. Or once we're done, we can move on to the next. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to set a timer. We'll take, I would say, we'll just take 5 minutes just very quickly to add some additional topics to the board. So if you're not sure about Metro Retro, you just double click, make sure you've got the pointer or the move tool selected in the left-hand column. Double click on the page to add a post-it, type away. And at the bottom, you'll see that there's your sticky notes are private or your sticky notes are public. Please make them public so everybody can see. You'll be able to see that mine are probably bouncing in between being visible and some scribble at the moment. So I'm going to set the timer. So if people can add some topics on there that they want to talk about, then we can get going. Go for it.
Stuart, if you let me share, I will put on some awesome Christmas music to do background.
Yeah, sure. I just got to find my. You want me to stop sharing, Callum?
Yes, please.
Yeah. No worries. Hold on. Over to you. I hope this really is awesome Christmas music.
Oh, it's like lift music.
Not bad. Not bad at all.
It's not my first rodeo.
Very smooth, Mr. Callum. I just imagine there's a pool table somewhere at the back of the jazz bar, and you just play.
So feel free to add topics, people. We got a couple of good ones, but anything you want to talk about when it comes to like creating CVs, formatting, writing CVs, content, templates, any of those things, feel free to like put in your questions that we can talk about them.
Or any suggestions that you have that you maybe have written really amazing CVs or helped other people, so it could be quite useful.
Yeah, that's a good point. You can do it from either side. If you're a job seeker and want to talk about CVs and creating them, or if you are reviewing CVs, anything there as well. NH, you might be on the group mode on the left-hand side of the little bar there. So if you look, you've got a group tool, and then just above it here, you've got a move tool. So if you go to move tool, when you double click, it will create a ticket rather than a group.
Right, little secret Santas are cleaning up.
No problem. All right, 45 seconds. So any more questions, bring them in. And if you click down the bottom here where it says your sticky notes are public or private, and that's time. Stuart, do you want to take over?
I don't think everyone's enabled their tickets to
No, they
public
haven't.
yet.
I think there's.
Ashutosh, your ticket is hidden.
Sure, let me unhide it. I am not sure because I'm using it on my phone and I've joined on my phone, so I'm not sure how to unhide it.
Um,
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you are.
yeah.
We're just
trying to figure out how to.
So are you able to see the question or that's also not visible?
If you want to write the question into the chat,
Great. I'll just do that.
okay, guys. So whilst we do that, so we'll move into a voting round. Okay. So again, for anybody that hasn't used Metro Retro, you'll see on the side here that there's a little plus button. That is your voting tool. And that enables you to vote on the tickets that you want to talk about. How many votes are we giving, guys? Five. As it's
Five.
Christmas, we'll give five votes. You can put all 5 votes on one single ticket if that topic really means that much to you, or you can spread them evenly around. This is quite pressurized, right? So you know, make sure you make the most of these votes because you're not getting any more. So let's start that voting round. We'll put 3 minutes on the timer just to do that voting, just very quickly, and then we can get going. So start your voting. 5 votes each.
So remember, click down here on the side for the voting tool, and then you can click them. Left click to add one, right click to remove one.
I do feel like I need to bring the head boppers out for the music.
Looks like we're calming down. Has everyone got their votes in? Cool.
If you finish voting, then just move your cursor away from the board so that we can see that you've clearly finished.
Awesome.
Looks like it. Brilliant. So, okay, so let's have a look then. What have we got?
Let's just whack them in order. There you go.
Brilliant. So, first ticket then, let's move these over. Let's get these over onto the discussion board. Get them in order. I'll move 4 over to start with, and then we can come back for the rest if we have time. So this first ticket here, I need to zoom in a little bit because my eyesight isn't as good as it was. So what sort of questions should I anticipate for initial screening calls? So whose ticket was that? Who wants to just open up and elaborate a little bit on that one so we can start the discussion? And I'll set the timer to 3 minutes when we're ready. Whose ticket was that one? Was that yours, Natalie?
I'm happy to.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
So when you start with an initial screening call, one of the really big things that you're going to be asked about is basically just to give an understanding that you know about the things that you've spoken about in your CV. So if I see a CV where people talk exclusively about a certain framework or a testing methodology, like exploratory testing, I usually ask them to start talking about, okay, what does this mean to you? Explain this concept to me. Or if they say about a framework, I say, cool, it looks like you've set up like a Nightwatch.js framework for Selenium. Talk to me about how you did that. And the idea there is just to get a good understanding of like whether or not you know what you've been talking about on your CV, or if you've just taken some buzzwords and just plopped them in there. So if you've gone in hard in certain areas, that's what I'll start to talk about.
Yeah, on my side, just to add, I've looked for before just the initial call is just to get to know the person, because it's so much easier for me to get to know a person through having a conversation. But there are key elements that I look for, and they're quite simple. It's more for the business than myself initially. It's to find out if the person has done any sort of research into the company, if they have looked at the product, if they know what the role is. Just 3 elements. The top ones for me is like they're red flags if you haven't looked at the company, don't even know the name of it. I don't personally care if you know how the story of a company started, because a lot of the times it's fluff, especially in a startup. They'll say, oh, 3 friends got together or 2 friends got, it doesn't matter. Just have a look at the product, have a look at the company, have a look at their financial state, to be honest. If you tell the interview that you know how the company is doing from a financial perspective and you start talking about that, that's quite interesting. If you understand what the business logistics and what that is about and how that works and what their partners, so sometimes you have businesses that do front-facing offering. You'll go to the website and go, oh, I can buy, I don't know, tickets, or I can buy cars or whatever. I can buy a product. It's an e-commerce site. But then you don't ever look a bit deeper underneath. And then I think it's a really cool thing if you go, oh, you're partnered with these people, and there's a partnership happening here, then there's a B2B side to it. So that's brownie points there. And yeah, product itself, just engage with it a little bit, try out pressing some buttons and have a look what it looks, because you're applying for essentially a tester role, right? And yeah, like that, know what the role is. That's it from my side.
Yeah, I think both those points are really, really valid. I guess every interview you go for will be slightly different, and the person interviewing you will be looking for something slightly different. So it's really hard to know exactly what to prepare for in that sense. But I think definitely, you know, I've done some where there's a lot of buzzwords on a CV, and like Callum, I'll just pick up on them a little bit just to tap in to see whether they really understand those, not even, you know, the experience side, but really understand what they're saying when they use those types of words. But I think the initial screening is very much for me around those more softer type skills, like, you know, Oleg said, you know, do you really know what the role is? Do you, you know, have you kind of done a little bit of research in the sense of how you feel as though you're what you're going to bring to that role, and actually what you're going to get from that role as well. So it's not just about what you're going to bring to the company, but understand what you can get from that company that's going to help you build your career and so on. So I think some of the better calls I've had initially are the ones that have just, you know, they've opened up and said, oh yeah, I've seen this really great thing and blah, blah, blah. And it just opens up conversation, which is really cool. So that's our time is up. Do we want to continue talking about this, or do we want to move on to the next ticket? Give us a thumbs up on the reactions if you want to keep talking about it. If not, then we'll move on. Cool. Okay, we'll move on. So we'll move that one over. Didn't move it over, did I? Naughty boy. I'll move that over to discuss. I'll move this one over. Okay, so how do I share community activities I've engaged with? So this ticket was by Callum. So I'll let you open up on this, Callum. We'll just reset the timer and we'll go.
Yeah, so one of the big things I found on a CV is talking about how I get engaged in the testing community. So even things like this, how do I put those forward on my CV? So I tend to put in events that I've attended or spoken at, or blog posts that I've written, just in like a side panel on my CV, just to showcase that not only do I work within a company or do my own research and so on as testing, I'm also engaged in things like Ministry of Test or these community events. And I find that that's quite a good way to sort of show how well-rounded you are. I usually do that by just putting like the name, the title with a link to it, and the sort of dates of the events that I've gone to or been a part of, or link to my blog and put them in there. I don't know what other people are thinking.
I agree. I mean, doing this stuff, like, you know, Ash may have introduced us as experts. I mean, we've done some testing. I wouldn't say I'm an expert anyway. I've done some testing, I've done some stuff for the last, you know, decade, but I've not really engaged with the community that much. And it's only last few years that I've been pushing myself because I'm interested. And I think that's really helped create a network of people. Like I've, you know, met Callum, Stuart, and Shash as well. So there's a few people, and then it's just kind of opened up just conversations. And I think anyone can just start doing that. It's easy. Lean coffees are quite straightforward. Just, you know, drink some tea or whatever and just have a chat.
I think it really helps like add something to your CV to show that you actually care about the craft of testing and that you're interested generally. If it helps, I pulled up my CV. Here we go. And I've just got a section. I know, right? I thought I'd show like a practical demonstration, but like you can see here, I've just got like events of like the talks that I've been in. Wow, Matt, rather than March. There's already a bug there. But yes, so but that's, I just do something like that effectively with links to any videos or anything that's in there, just to sort of showcase the types of things I'm involved in.
Yeah, I think that sort of thing is great because it also shows that you're not only active, i.e. you're contributing, but you're also building an awareness of what's going on in the community. And you know, we work in technology. Technology changes so fast. We need to be on top of those things. So, you know, how we work, how we engage, you know, our engineering communities that we work with, all those things really play into that. So it's great to be able to kind of demonstrate that somehow. And this is a really good way of doing it.
Another way you can definitely do it is post on LinkedIn. say like, thank you QA London for this really cool talk that I attended, blah, 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 I learned this. And when people go from your CV through to your social media and your LinkedIn post, they'll see how engaged you are. And also add comments onto things, showcase that you're actually involved in the community, because people can use LinkedIn just as easy as they can your CV. They will Google you. Yeah,
It's true.
9 times out of 10, they will Google you.
It's true. But I know some people may suffer a little bit from stress of just having to put themselves out there. And I'd say to that, like, even if you just attend and watch and learn and listen, you are then still engaging. And if you start slowly putting yourself out there without having to put anything online, say, oh, I'm doing this, non-recorded ones, whatever you want to do, you'll start to build up confidence and be able to have conversations about things that you're passionate about slowly. And if you start doing it bit by bit, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever, like even asking the question here, right? If you verbally ask a question here, that's already like building up your confidence.
Personally, how I got into public speaking and stuff was I started out doing like brown bags at work with people you know and trust. That was such an easy introduction into talking, and everyone expects you to be nervous so they don't care.
Yeah.
So it's so much easier to get in behind that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, 100%. I've restarted the timer, guys, because we were just continuing chatting anyway. So I think, Dono, I think that's a really good point in terms of find your safe place to practice those things. And as employers and organizations, we should be creating those safe spaces exactly for that reason, right? But I think, as Oleg said, just attending these sort of things, even if you don't speak, you're gaining knowledge, and that's really, really important. You're gaining awareness, and it's then how you reflect that back out to the companies that you're applying for roles with. So yeah.
And don't be afraid to ask for like coaches or mentors or like second presenters to like come along to these things as well. You don't have to do it alone. My first big speaking gig I did with my test manager, Elizabeth, who like said, hey, do you want to get involved in this? And it was a brilliant way in because she knew the ropes and what to expect.
Nice.
Cool. So we've still got another minute on this, but do we want to reset this and then start a new topic now? Yeah, cool. Okay, so let's reset. We'll move this topic over. Flying through these today. Right, so, okay, so how do I represent softer skills on my CV? So this is actually a ticket I put on here. Let me just start this timer. So I think one of the big things for me is it's kind of just coming back to a little bit what we've just been talking about to a degree. One of the big things, especially I think with how we're doing things right now, a lot of remote interviews and so on, you can't gauge the softer side of somebody's skill sets, i.e., their behaviors and how they interact with people just from a CV. Now, adding stuff in there around what you're doing in the community is a good way of doing that. But we often talk very much about, oh, I've used this tool, I've done this type of testing, et cetera. But we don't talk about how you may have engaged with your engineers or how you may have engaged with your product owners or collaborated and stuff like that. So for me, I'm always looking for those type of things on a CV. So somebody just to say, oh, and I've used this, but I collaborated. I much prefer to say I've collaborated in this way with the team. And as a team, we've done this, rather than always going, I've done this, I've done that, I've used this tool, you see what I mean? So it's a lot of times it's the wording that you use as well. Yes, you want to sell yourself, but one of the things to remember is that a lot of teams nowadays, it's collaboration, it's communication, it's working together. As they say, there's no I in team. So it's really difficult when you're trying to sell yourself, but actually what you want to try and also do is sell the fact that you work really well, really collaboratively, and use those types of terms in your CV to make those things shine as well. I've started more recently just doing kind of pre-record some questions. So I ask, if you're working with a recruiter, can you just ask some questions and get the guys to answer these things? And it's sometimes that helps just bring out some of those things a little bit more that they might not be able to write in a text format. So that kind of gives us a little bit more of a guide as to, you know, the type of person they are, how they collaborate, how they communicate, those kind of things. But yes, that's for me.
Yes, especially in the current times. I think any role, like really high up, should talk about how you're able to talk to and engage with and build rapport with your teammates that are maybe overseas or just in a different building because no one's allowed out at the moment. So anything where you're able to say, you know, I worked with and built great relationships with a developer, you know, over in India, and we were able to debug this over Zoom, and you know, we had a great back and forth and exchange of ideas. Anything where you're able to share some of that in your roles, whilst keeping it relevant to testing as well, so that you're not padding out with like, hey, I had a cup of tea with somebody over in Poland and it was great. Which is great, but is it useful for the CV? So yeah, anything like that is really powerful.
Okay, so we've got time up on that ticket. Do we want to carry on talking about that? Has anybody got any questions they want to ask, or shall we move on? Cool, we shall move on.
We're flying through these this morning, aren't we?
We are. Guys, if you've got any questions during this, right, just by all means, please do ask and raise them as we go. Even if your audio is not working correctly, just pop them in the chat and we can pick them up. So this one looks like it might be Dono.
Yeah.
Let's start the timer.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So basically, this was a bit of a selfish one. So something I was wanted to make sure I'm on the right path in my personal side of things. But I find it like when you've got the sort of internal side of things and you're going through LinkedIn jobs and you've got like 100 CVs to go through, what I kind going through 100 individually, you are going to get tired and you're going to miss a lot. Essentially, that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, I've been through a lot over the last few months, and and to the point that, like you say, I have missed probably some good candidates in there. I think for me, if I don't get drawn in within like the first few lines of reading something, then the chances are, you know, if all the really kind of engaging stuff is further down the CV, the likelihood is I'm not even going to get there. And that's for me is really powerful. The profile side of things, what's about you, is really the thing that I'm looking at when I'm doing that. So I'm not even, as I say, the buzzword stuff, it's there generally, you know, it comes over in highlights or whatever, bold, but it's the profile of the person that I'm really looking at. And if you can express basically that whole thing in that profile, kind of, if you look at Callum's CV, it's one page, I think. Callum, is that right? And you know, he's got some is the ways which he's done it. It's there, you know, it's all there in one page. So I can read that within, you know, less than a minute and feel engaged or not, you know, and that's really important. You want to make sure that you've got that information up front. So for me, it's about, I'll be looking at the about me side of things more so than anything.
Didn't even need this bit. Turns out.
No, come and work for me, Callum.
Just on my side, I mean, to add to the part where you said, how do you ensure that you're given the right amount of attention to all the CVs? I've read this interesting study in another book called Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, and basically talks about how judges used to they did a study on judges of letting people go on parole or release them earlier, and the likelihood of that happening went down too close to lunch because they got hungrier, or in the evening because they got more tired because you got more like grumpy or hangy. And it's interesting because I read that and I was like, I find that a lot similarities when I'm going for CVs. I'm getting tired, and then I'm more likely to say no to the CV because I'm tired. So as soon as I identify that fact, I then went, I'm going to chunk it in the time where I'm more focused, I'm much more energetic, and I'm properly looking at it, and I'm looking for some key facts. Maybe I'll select a few criteria depending on the context, right? I'll set criteria based on context what I'm looking for at the time for that role specifically. And I will just kind of go bash it out and stop, take a break, go for a walk, relax, not look at CVs, and then do another chunk of maybe 20, 30 to run through again. Obviously, there's some CVs that you just take away completely your focus, like 8 characters font and or 8 size font. You're like looking at it and going, nope, that's not helping. So that's going to straight away make you grumpy.
Yes, speaking to that, like formatting really is like the first bite of the cake is with the eyes. Formatting really does have an impact. If I see like just a wall of text, I'm more likely to skim it. If I see something that's much better laid out, especially if somebody says they've tested a load of UX stuff or accessibility or whatever, show me that. I see a lot of templates being used, but like inconsistently. So somebody that's just kept to the formatting that they've laid out initially, somebody that's just laid something out in a easy thing to understand, easy thing to read, something that just looks kind of nice, really helps as well with a lot of this stuff.
I think as a tester as well, if you're having a CV where there's multiple different text or font sizes, it shows that lack of attention to detail as well a little bit further. So you can sometimes skim past just on those basis that they've taken probably not as much time to quality check their own profile. I think going back to what Stuart said, I think having that sort of personal introduction at the top, obviously that showcases the softer side a little bit more as well. I think that comes across a lot better than just having maybe a skills matrix or a load of sort of keywords that are bold or bigger font or something like that as well. So I think just looking at the layout of it, making sure that it's easily readable. Like Callum's, it's quite concise, that you've got the introduction at the first to give you a bit more information about him, not just from a work perspective, but obviously his interests as well. But then in terms of the experience there, it's short but detailed context of what he's actually been doing as well. And again, going back to what Stuart was saying, it's not just what he's done personally, but it's also how he's interacted with the team. You can see through there as well. So yeah, I think from my side, obviously reviewing hundreds of CVs daily, just the layout is probably the key thing, because if you've got 100 CVs and not so much time to read through it, you need to be able to read the text or read the actual subject matter a lot quicker. So it needs to be easily readable as well.
Just to jump in there, another thing on that topic is when people use big words just to use big words, that really makes it also quite tiresome. Yeah.
Yeah, I hate reading CVs where I don't actually understand the words I'm reading as well. I mean, it's just if I have to use a dictionary, I'm checked out.
To that end, very quickly, it's important then that the wording that you're using, especially when it comes to testing concepts, is correct and meaningful. One of the issues in our profession, I would say, is that we don't have a lot of standardization when it comes to what things mean. So if somebody says exploratory testing, what do they mean? Some people will understand that to be a very structured approach that is plannable, that is to find information about things that we're going to automate, that you can do much earlier in the life cycle and will be pushed as far left as possible. Some people understand that to mean a bit of chaotic UI testing at the very end that is unplanned, that you just click around and you hope and you cross your fingers and maybe you find bugs and it's a bug bash. So it's really clear, it's really important to ensure that your terminology you use is meaningful, or that you can at least give some context around that, or be prepared to explain it in that in the interview calls to say, what did you mean by this? Because that's one of the issues that we have with a lot of CVs, just a non-standard approach to certain terms and terminologies.
Does that help, Dono?
And the mute button. Yeah, that's brilliant. Thanks.
Awesome. So we'll move that ticket over then. That was a good discussion. Okay, so let's bring another one in. Oh, Dono again.
Yeah, simply just like Give me the best CV you've ever like seen or heard, and Callum, you can't cheat and use your own. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, just what are the key things that you remember, the CVs that stood out still in your mind now?
So a lot of the good ones that I have seen, again, the main elements were that they were easy to read, that they were well formatted, that they had links back to different bits of information. I've seen CVs that link to portfolios of work that were really good. So the links in the CV said, I worked on this project and did this, and there was a link to it. Or I've researched like containerization, and there was a link to their repo, or something like that, where you could then drill into and see different bits of information. Those were really good because you could get more context much more quickly. So you've got your one pager that gives the highlights with drill down of information. CVs as taught are still very 1980s. 1990s in how we teach people to write CVs, which is get it all on a bit of paper because you're going to print it out and give it to somebody. We don't live in that world anymore. We live in a world where everything's interconnected. You've got social media, you've got the internet, you've got videos. So somebody that's actually linked to presentations, linked to different pieces of work they've done that are NDR compliant and all that sort of stuff is really powerful and really good.
It's true. It's an attention grab, isn't it? It's if you think about it, and if we're running through hundreds of CVs, if there's one that's going to grab your attention, you're going to spend 5 minutes on it, you're more likely to go, oh, this is really interesting, I'm going to invite this person for a call. So among the sea of CVs that you go through, it is important to, I think there's a terrible name for it, is a peacock effect, which is basically, it's a terrible thing. Don't do it. Don't just add colors and whatever, but think about what the context is. Think about what you're trying to add and why you're trying to grab the attention, because you can grab attention for all the wrong reasons and you go, nope, no, thank you, next. I had a friend share his CV to give me inspiration when I was revamping mine, and he's a developer. And he's done lots of projects in his time, and he did it in a different, he actually did it in a portrait landscape mode, putting a description of the project, picture of the project for different companies he worked in, a bit about the company, a bit about the product, and how he contributed. And I was like, this isn't a normal standard CV, but it tells me so much about his skill set. It tells me so much about his passion and interest and why he cares, not just about, oh, I implemented some virtualization here, but actually the product itself, he cared enough to include that and about the company as well. And I was like, wow, that just to this day still stand out to me. I'm like, that is my perfect idea what a CV should be, not just about you, but also about the product that you worked on and how you worked with the team and how you contributed to it. Sorry for taking up time.
Excellent. Do we want to carry on talking about this one? Give me a thumbs up if we do.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you guys. So when you said something about when you actually put in something out of the box, not just which is part of your own testing, but including with either DevOps or product to include a follow-up or something that we can deliver better to a client. So how do I reflect that part in my CV? So how do I write it down? Like,
Is this saying that you've
how do
contributed
you suggest
to?
that?
Yeah, so you're saying if you've contributed to something like the DevOps process, come up with a strategy for it, or actually worked specifically on delivering DevOps. Is that what you mean?
Uh, Not exactly. So there had been few issues with the deployments, and the VMs were not the Azure VMs were not that compliant, or you can say they were lot many people were logging into it but not logging off out of it. So a couple of group policies were suggested and then applied eventually. It took a month because about 30 developers work on the same VM. Can you imagine? So it was a mess. So it was started that off. Then again, the VMs were on the whole time, even on the weekends. So it was suggested that it's best practice to save some money there. So no one asked me to do that, but yes, I went on to do some reading on Azure. How are they charged? What are the pricings and all these things? So eventually, it is helping the company itself. And when we are not frustrated in every Go pipeline, and we are we are contributing more to our work then. So
So
it
I
is a
think,
kind of productivity builder.
yeah, I think that's it. I think you touched on a couple of things there. One there is that you went out your way to do some self-learn and understand a bit more around where the challenges were. But then also it's then applying that self-learning to help the team continuously improve, or help your delivery process or whatever that is continuously improve. So I think that's kind of how you'd want to try and structure that in your CV somehow. And kind of what I was saying earlier in terms of, how you've worked with the team or how you've applied some learnings, those kind of things, rather than getting down into the specific detail of what you did, keep it a little bit more high level, but with, around, just much more high level in terms of, some self-learning that I applied within the DevOps space for our, to aid our delivery pipeline, so on and so on, rather than going, oh, we had this trouble here, blah, 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 and getting into that detail. Because at that point, you've lost the person anyway. So you want to be able to try and articulate that really easily, really nicely, but at a slightly higher level, if that makes sense.
Also, just on that, like what Oleg was saying, like put it against the project that you did it on, what the value you gave to the company, and showing that value add you gave. That's actually feedback I got when I redid my CV like 3 months ago, and it was like, it's helped. But be prepared for questions in that area, though.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks for that.
If you raise like a topic like this and you've just done some light reading around it, the expectation, if you've got it on your CV, is that you contributed quite heavily, and that the questions coming at you will be, so what did you do? Like, what reading? What did you implement? What did you do to actually turn this around? You talked about saving money. How did you do that? If you just talk theoretically and just talk about something you read in a book, make it really clear, I read about this topic. Don't say I implemented this topic if you haven't, because otherwise the expectation is there that you've actually drilled in and done this thing. And that just creates a bit of an initial disconnect between yourself and the person reviewing the CV. But if you want to talk about learnings and things that you've theoretically learned, maybe write a blog post or a post about it and link to that, because that's a really good way of sharing, showing that you can share stuff that you've learned about, that you were able to take that learning and then explain it to other people as well. So that's always a good way to do it.
That's a really, really, really good advice there. You can literally put, you can like Stuart said, break it down into different things, like, how you take an initiative and whatnot, and you can put a sentence, and then you can actually then link to that sentence a blog that you wrote about. So then people can ask you a question, but then actually read the blog as well. Yeah.
That really helps. Thanks.
Excellent. So I think we've probably got enough time for one more. So I'm just going to move this one over. So we've got two here. So we've got
For the bottom one, I've had two.
So what should I include in my CV? So shall we move that one over, or is there another one over this side that we'd actually like to do? Should I include a cover letter? What should my formatting be? How do I use testing terminology effectively? So which one do we want to talk about?
I think those two kind of say the same thing, really, as well.
These two here.
What should I put in my CV and what stands out?
Yeah.
Yep. Let's do the generalized. What should I include then?
Yep. Let's move it over. Go for it.
So, kicking this off, I would say the purpose of your CV is to start off a conversation with an interviewer or with a company to detail the types of things, the types of testing, especially, that you can do, that you can bring to the table. So really what you want to include in that CV at a really high level is that you have an understanding of different types of testing that could be useful to this company or project, and also an understanding of how you've applied that, not just that you know what it is, how you've applied it and used it in real world situations. Those are the two main things that you really want to be including, to say, not just I understand what exploratory testing is, or I understand what a Selenium JS framework is, but then to go in deeper and say, and here's what I've done to showcase that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think the understanding and being able to show you understand something is really, really important. But to do it in a way that is, engaging, so it grabs your attention. As I mentioned earlier, you can, for me, having that profile about me section at the top where you can be, summarizing some of those things. You don't have to summarize every piece of understanding you ever have around every single type of testing. But also what you don't want to do is you don't want to go, just have a list of the different types of testing that you've done, or because again, everybody does that on a CV, right? It's a buzzword thing. So just try and think about how you can build that in. I think for me, definitely a CV it's almost like a user story in the sense that it, like Callum says, it is a means to a conversation, right? You want to grab somebody's attention. You want to build a little bit of intrigue. Don't try and put everything into a CV, else you're going to have an 8-page document that, will never work. But put enough on there to get that intrigue. If you've got links to your LinkedIn profile, social media, make that person want to click that link, right? That's what you really want them to do, because that means they're interested straight away. If I go onto somebody's LinkedIn profile, I'm already interested. I'm already going to have a little look, see what they're doing in the community and so on. So yeah, think of it like that.
And sorry, Alec.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't be afraid to have more than one page. I know a lot of people want to cram everything into one page. If you do want to have one page, just delete anything that's not contextual to the role. You don't need to include things like I worked in Sainsbury's. No one cares. That's not, I might have spent half my life there, but no one's going to go like, oh, how did you, unless you can translate some of the skill set. Sure, that's great. You can show that. That's amazing. But don't be afraid to have, I say up to 3 is the optimal. And don't be afraid to be creative with your CV to showcase your skill set. Like I said before, you can talk about your company, the projects you worked on, and how you contributed from different levels, from soft skills perspective, hard skill perspective. And if you want to throw in numbers in there, feel free. Like I've saved company 50% revenue, whatever. But back it up. Make sure you can back it up.
One of the really, I think, yeah. It sounds like we're talking about putting in information that's useful, and that can be really difficult, especially now, because the industry has shifted to job specs for testers that are all things to all people. So they will ask you for 15 different languages, 230 different testing types over 40,000 operating systems, and so on and so on. What it boils down to is you can probably work it out domain by domain or industry by industry. If it's a big tech firm, you probably want to talk about how you've done very modern agile testing. So how you've used exploratory testing in conjunction with CI/CD pipelines. So how have you implemented your end-to-end testing using automation? How have you paired with people, shifted testing left, run TDD? If it's a bigger organization that has a lot of regulations, like a bank, how do you do auditing? How do you show traceability of your testing? What kinds of verification and validation have you used in those sorts of things? If it's government work, you know full well that all government work pretty much has to include accessibility at some point. So what do you know about accessibility testing? What do you know about those sorts of things? So from the domain and the industry that this work is in, you can start to drill down and understand, showcase the types of things that they might be interested in, even if the job spec is everything to all people.
Brilliant.
Just
No, I think it's there's always that discussion around, should I customize my CV for the role that I'm going after? customize it to the point of you're showing it, you're translating what, as I say, what you think that organization is going to be looking for. Don't translate it and expose yourself to stuff you don't actually know just for the sake of putting it on there, right? To get you through the door, because that's going to create a whole different challenge for yourself, basically. But yeah, pull on your skills, pull on your experience that you think will relate specifically, and bring that to the forefront. If you know that that's what the organization or the type of organization is that you're going after, just do your research up front. What we said earlier.
On that one,
sorry, go on.
Oh, as I say, on that one, I don't actually mind if someone hasn't personalized their CV for the job, so long as they are advertising their personal brand. If they're doing that, that's what I'm buying into.
Yeah, 100%, definitely. I'd much prefer to see that than specifics for the role, as I said earlier. But it can help sometimes, depending on, obviously every employer is different, every organization is different. Sometimes you have to almost second guess. What do you think they're going to be looking for, right? But also, if you're working with a recruitment agency, they should also be able to help you. Ash, no pressure to think about those things. So they should know the client. They should help you be able to do some of that stuff. So
they should.
We've
always
got
should.
one tiny section, which is the hobbies section. I think it's important to include hobbies because you're a real human person.
We've all got this.
Yeah, but no, sorry, go on.
I was going to say, we've all got the same hobbies at the moment, haven't we? Sitting at home, gaming or watching TV.
I'd say, but if you put in a hobby section, make sure you've got interesting hobbies, because if you have to read, like, I enjoy reading and keeping up with current affairs and technology, one more time, you might snap.
Yeah, I mean, the one, I had a really interesting one that I had a CV for. I actually hired the guy as well. And like his whole CV was very much, he's a bloke's bloke. And then he's like, and I'm a cheerleader. And I was like, what the hell?
Nice.
It was so brilliant.
Excellent. So
that actually got him the interview as well.
Because you wanted to know more about that. Brilliant. So that's all the tickets. I mean, we almost got through. Well, we got through quite a lot actually today, I think. So yeah, Ash, I'll hand it back over to you.
Thanks a lot, guys. Obviously, I think good information there for those that are looking to, I guess, revamp their CVs and their profiles. I guess personal branding as well for the changes in the market and where we're at the moment. So I think, as a summary, I think like you guys mentioned, that sort of personal awareness and social awareness, I guess, of what you're doing overall, is a current trend or something that people are looking into more now that everything is a lot more remote. When obviously you're looking to hire somebody, it's a lot more challenging to get to know them as it would be, face to face in the office. So I think, I don't want to speak for a lot of you, but most first ports of call are looking at the LinkedIn profile, trying to get a feel for what that person's doing, what their interests are, beyond the CV as well. So yeah, keeping it concise and keeping a social profile, I guess, or being socially active. I think the advances of LinkedIn over the last 6 to 12 months have increased that a lot more as well, made that a lot more accessible for people to see as well. So yeah, I think really good talk. I hope that will help a lot of people that not just on this call, but that we share the recording with as well. But yeah, I think that's it from me. Thanks again, guys, for everybody that's contributed and everybody that's listened in. We'll obviously we'll keep things going in the new year with hopefully some new content and more conversations to be had. I'll let you guys let me know what you want to hear and what you want to discuss. But no, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Have a great Christmas and New Year, and I'll speak to you all soon.
Thanks, Ash.
Thanks, guys.
a lot, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good Christmas. Take care.